Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. Let's take a look at a video.
A lot of people don't know this, but there's actually a few things the Bible says God can't do. Here's what they are and why they're really awesome.
All right, let's see it.
All right, number one, Hebrews 6:18 says that God cannot lie. God can't lie because God is truth.
Well, there are other parts of the Bible that pretty clearly say God can and does lie. For instance, someone pretending to be Paul decades after he died wrote in 2 Thessalonians 2:11 that God will send them a powerful delusion so that they will believe a lie. That's lying. In 1 Kings 22, Micaiah tells Ahab that he saw Adonai sitting on their throne surrounded by the spirits, requesting a volunteer to go entice Ahab to his death. And the Spirit, the very Spirit of God, said, I will be a lying spirit in the mouths of his prophets, and he will go up to battle and will be killed. And God says, ooh, I like it, and approves the plan so that a lie can be spoken through the mouths of Ahab's Yahwistic prophets in the name of Adonai and with Adonai's approval, so that Ahab can be deceived to his very death. That's a lie. That's lying. You have other parts of the Hebrew Bible where Jeremiah and even Isaiah represent God misleading and deceiving the people. And there are even parts of the patriarchal narratives where God endorses and promotes deception in order to fulfill the promise to Abraham. And there's even a great book about this written by a friend of mine named John Anderson called Jacob and the Divine Trickster. And it talks about how there is a theology of deception in the patriarchal narratives. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, no, God's not lying in any of those places because you've already centered and given priority to the passage that endorses the dogma that you have chosen to accept. And so you presuppose univocality, which means all the passages that directly contradict the one you've centered have to be either ignored or renegotiated and reinterpreted to mean something else. That's the unifying framework that the dogma of univocality requires you impose on the Bible so that you can tell the Bible what it is and is not allowed to be saying. And in this instance, you are telling the Bible, no, you're not allowed to say that God lies. So you have to tergiversate what the Bible is very clearly saying so that your dogma wins out.
Number two, Malachi 3 says that God can't change. Theologians call this the immutability of God. Because if he could change, that means he could improve, and he can't improve because he's already perfect.
Again, there are numerous other parts of the Bible that directly contradict this claim, that represent God as not being perfect, as changing, as improving, or as being different enough from other parts of the Bible that either God is changing or most of the representations of God throughout the Bible are false. For instance, in the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis 2 and 3, God creates Adam and then realizes that their creation is not good, because the human is alone, and so God has to create a companion that is suitable for Adam, and gets it wrong with the first try. When God makes animals, that doesn't work. God has to try again. Through trial and error, God finally finds a companion that is suitable for Adam. When God is walking in the garden, God has to ask where Adam is. God has to ask if Adam ate the fruit that God told Adam not to eat. And of course, if you presuppose univocality and inspiration and inerrancy and historicity and everything, you can't accept that, and so you have to impose that unifying framework on the Bible and tell the Bible what it is and is not allowed to say, so that the passages that directly contradict the current dogma can be reinterpreted away so that the dogma overrules the Bible.
Number three, Isaiah 55 says that God can't think like we think. Theologians call this the omniscience of God. Omni means all, science means knowledge. So God can't think like us because he has all knowledge about past, present, and future at the same time. So that means nothing ever surprises God. Nobody ever tells God something that makes him go, oh, myself.
That's not what Isaiah 55 says. Isaiah 55 says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, which is not claiming that God is incapable of thinking like humans. The only representations of deity that are available to us are human representations, are human thoughts. And the notion of omniscience is a philosophical framework. This is one of those ways that God has changed, because as people began to think in more philosophically oriented ways about God, they began to be concerned for consistency and for how God is represented. And this primarily happens starting in Greco-Roman period Judaism, and so it comes through most clearly in the New Testament. But the philosophical concept of omniscience is really only developed fully after the New Testament was complete. So that's a version of God that was not achieved until after the Bible was complete. But the Bible, again, repeatedly represents God as not knowing all things. And again, if you presuppose all these dogmas about God, then you're going to find that you are very easy to convince that the passages that directly contradict that can be made to go away, as long as you impose that unifying framework of inerrancy and inspiration and historicity and univocality.
All right, now, if those things are true, that means three amazing things.
And the only thing that determines if they're true is if you want them to be true.
1, every plan God has for his children is better than your own. 2, if he's been faithful to you in the past, he's going to be faithful to you today. And number 3, every promise God has made, he's going to fulfill.
Just make sure you ignore the plan to have animals be humanity's special companions, and make sure you ignore the promise at the beginning of 2 Kings 3. And you know what? Just ignore anything in the Bible that conflicts with these dogmas, and we'll be all right.
Because my God is not just the Alpha. He doesn't just start things. He's the Omega. He finishes things.
Except for that promise to come back a second time and end the world before that first generation died off. That didn't quite work out. But again, you got to ignore anything the Bible says that doesn't agree with what we tell you the Bible is allowed to say. But for those who would like to think critically about the Bible, I wrote a book called The Bible Says So, What We Get Right and Wrong About Scripture's Most Controversial Issues. It comes out April 29th. There will be an audiobook that I will be narrating. Pre-orders are available now. You can check it out through my bio. And the fit for this video has been Rick and Morty.